What is up, crew? It's your boy Kaycem, and on today's video, I'm going to be showing you guys how to draw different body types, especially when it comes to drawing children. And we're going to be going over here how to draw some of the shape language, some of the proportions, and then also going over a few examples. Now, if you've never been here before, my name is Kaycem, and I'm a Filipino art streamer here on Twitch, teaching everything from anatomy perspective to all things character design, and I also work full-time in the animation industry for the studio that made Castlevania. So on here on today's video, I'm going to be showing you guys again some of the things that we've covered already with proportions. I'll also show you guys some of these 3 examples here, and then this is already something that we already drew live on my Twitch stream, so check me out on Twitch if you want to go see some of these other examples that we're going to be covering today. Now, before we do get into the example, I do want to show you guys that on my Discord channel, you can grab some of the worksheets that we have out here. We have this one right here, which is the one I just showed you. We also have here this cheat sheet that I made last year, which covers some of the skeletal and muscular anatomy of the torso of the human body. Highly recommend you grab this one. And then this one right here is also going to be the proportions breakdown that I did a study of a while back from MDJ, where I go over some of the simple shapes and then turn them into muscular forms, right? Again, these are free to grab, but they're only available while I'm live on Twitch. So if you do want to grab them, and if you're watching from YouTube, you know what to do. Join me on Twitch, check out my Discord channel, and all of that good stuff. But with that being said, let's go ahead and put away some of these other references, because right now I'm going to be showing you guys how to draw the body, particularly here looking at drawing a little bit of a chubbier character. So drawing kind of a kid with a bit more body fat, a bit more of that shape and stuff. And so for this one right here, we kind of had a more rectangular shape for more of a lankier character. So really lengthening out there that box vertically. And we're going to be using a 5-head proportion structure for my examples. Now, if you've watched a few of my other bootcamp videos before, you may know that we are using Legend of Korra and Legend of Vox Machina as the examples for today's for the bootcamp's drawings. But this bootcamp is not necessarily a bootcamp that is meant to teach you how to draw in a specific style, more so teaching you how to observe different types of the body and then how to apply a stylistic look and feel to that. So if you are interested in a different style of a movie, show, game, or whatever have you, pick those things out and then use that as your example when we're going over here. But for this one in particular here, I've noticed that a lot of the style of stuff like Legend of Korra and Legend of Vox Machina, they tend to use a little bit of a 5-head structure here when it comes to drawing children. And so what that means by a 5-head structure is that the body and the overall height of a character is going to be roughly about 5 heads tall. And so we're going to be using some of that here to be able to draw out our character and just to get a general proportion and feel for the look. Now, you might be wondering, Kaycem, why is it so important to have all of these proportions and these techniques and stuff? And that's a great question, because oftentimes in animation, you can imagine if there are hundreds of different artists who are working on a scene and drawing different characters, having things like a consistent proportion, a consistent style will actually make it so that it's easier for character artists and animators and whoever to be able to make sure that they're drawing the same look and feel for their characters. So there's many reasons why it's good to learn this, but it's also good for consistency. But also, for example, how many of you guys in the chat, put an F in the chat if you've ever drawn a character, let's say an original character, and then the second, third, fourth time you tried to draw that character, for some reason, they don't look like the first time you drew them. And you start scratching your head and you're kind of like, I guess this is actually a different character. This is a new OC. You know what I'm saying? Put an F in the chat if you know what I'm talking about. Because all too often as artists, especially when I was a beginner, I was more focused on drawing the details and drawing something that looked good, but not really understanding how something was looking and why something was working the way it did. So being able to visualize these simple proportions and all that stuff is something that I highly recommend you guys to try with your own drawings. And again, proportions and stuff are going to be different depending on your style and what you're looking for. So don't feel like you have to do it in the way that I'm doing it here. If you have a different approach or a different look, definitely give that a try and see how that feels. But yeah, so going in here right now, I'm just locking in here some basic shapes. So kind of using the proportions of the human body. And I'll talk a little bit about proportions here because again, it is a new day out here on the boot camp. And so it's been a minute since we've talked about proportions. Now, right now, what's really cool about the 5-head structure is that I'm using the body type here to kind of help us understand where to place everything. So first of all, the halfway mark here of the head, so if you take, sorry, from the top of the head all the way down here to the feet, that halfway mark is usually where that pelvis is going to land. Now, depending on how your characters get older and all that stuff, usually this is going to be where that greater trochanter is. The greater trochanter is this bony landmark right here on the sides of your leg, which is created by the femur bone there, the head of the femur jutting out there on the side. But in this case here, for the stylized look, they're going to be using the halfway mark there to be kind of that top of that pelvis. So probably where that anterior superior iliac spine is going to be. From here, what we like to see, and this is kind of what's pretty consistent amongst a lot of art styles, is that as you go from halfway to here, so about 1.25 heads down, is usually we're going to be where the bottom of the knee is going to land. So this is a nice thing you'll oftentimes see in a lot of stylistic designs, not just Legend of Korra, but even in reality. If you were to study, for example, the human body, again, check out day number 1 of this boot camp to see what I'm talking a little bit more about. But you'll see here how some of these proportions are going to be consistent throughout different body types. So here, the bottom of the knee is going to be roughly about 1/4 of the total height of your character. And so I'm going to be using a lot of these things, again, to keep consistency with my design and be able to quickly draw out the characters that we're knocking out here today, right? So I'm going to go in right now. I'm like adding in here the bottom of the knee. I know where that's going to land. And then I'm going to start adding in the shapes and stuff for the calves. Now, because we are drawing a bit more of a bulky character, I might exaggerate some of the volume here just a little bit, right? So, obviously these are going to be exaggerations. So the style might not look exactly the same for all of you guys who are following. Maybe you'll do something a little different. But again, just kind of have fun with it, play around with some of the shapes and see what you can possibly come up with. So let's go in here. I'm going to add in the ankle and all that stuff. And for today's stream, I'm not going to be going over too much about the anatomy, because I think anatomy is less of the focus for today's stream and really more about shape design and overall volume. But I will say that a few tips and tricks I'll kind of give out is when it comes to drawing out, let's say, the curvature of the leg and trying to figure out what parts of the leg need to be curving where. Here, what I'm doing is I'm denoting a little bit of that inner calf. And the way that I do that is I'm basically following this nice little trick that I learned from TB Choi, which is the inner calf right here, which is comprised of the gastrocnemius and the soleus muscle, is going to oftentimes be a little bit lower on the inner end here. And then here you have the tibialis anterior, which is a muscle that originates on the outer side and wraps out. But what that does is it actually creates here an angle kind of like this that goes down right here. So you can have the farthest point here up here, and then maybe the lowest point a little bit here. I put it here, so maybe let's actually make this arrow like this. There you go. So you have this point here, and then also similarly on the bottom side now, the ankles, check this out. The ankles right here are also going to do the opposite effect. So the inner ankle here, which is caused by the tibia bone, that's going to be a little bit higher up than the fibula on the outer side. And what you can do if you're having a hard time remembering this is just imagine you had an angry face, right? And you had the brows here like this, and they're just kind of grumpy. That's it. Imagine a grumpy face there for the legs, and this will always help you get an understanding of how the curvature and the flow of the legs are going to be working. Did I draw this on the same layer? I did, didn't I? Okay, let me undo all of that. But there you go. Quick little tip there. Sounds like a pre-med class again. Oh, I know. I'm trying not to make this stream super anatomical, because again, it's not necessarily about the anatomy for this one. I think it's really more about understanding proportions and shape design. I think that's going to be the big difference between drawing a kid versus drawing, let's say an elderly character, right? Like, what are the subtle differences there when it comes to drawing these types of characters? And that's kind of what I want to focus on today. Now, when it comes to drawing children, oftentimes I find that a lot of the features are still not developed, and so we're going to be less reliant on things like the muscles and stuff, and more reliant on things like the skeletal anatomy as well as the body fat distribution. I think that to me is going to be more important, and it'll actually be more prevalent as we'll see kind of in the design and stuff here. And I think the biggest thing too when it comes to drawing children is really going to be also the head. So you'll see how when we draw out the head portion here, that is what's going to be the biggest indicator of, oh, is this just a really buff character or a really big character, an adult, or is this actually a really chunky kid, right? So we'll go ahead and do that in a quick second. Nice trick. Yeah, it's a cool little trick. I mean, the trick itself is just to remember, like the angry face is how you remember, but the actual portions of the where to draw the curvature and stuff, that is just anatomy. That's just understanding how the anatomy sits on the human body. So here I'm going to go kind of, make him have a little bit of a chunkier hips there on the side, and a lot of the volume, we haven't talked about it yet, but a lot of the volume here is going to be covering the fat here on the glutes and then wrapping around on top of the quad muscles there, right? And so what this is going to do is this is going to actually give us a little bit more of a bulky look there for our hips, though again, the skeletal anatomy is really, really the same overall. It's kind of that same structure that we're keeping. But let's go in now and let's draw in the legs, all of that good stuff, and then we'll get into drawing the upper body torso and whatnot. But yeah, already I would say we've got here a good chunky build for a character, right? Like, I think the other thing too is, like, even though you're going to have kids that are going to be really fat and stuff, you don't have to go super crazy with, like, the shapes. Maybe you can if you really want to, but I'm keeping it a little bit subtle here, kind of keeping the proportions to be a little bit more realistic. So if you are going to be doing your own characters and maybe you want to draw a character that's really fat, I would say just to exaggerate some of the features here, some of the differences between a skinny character and a fat character, you can kind of see already. We're looking at the volume and all of that stuff. But here I'm going to go use also some rounder shapes, because I think for this one, we're going to go for a little bit of a rounder motif, right? Rounder motif here. So we're going to be using more kind of bigger curves to denote this character's design. Look at that. Boom, boom. A bit of a rounder knee, right? So adding in all these kind of subtle shape designs will, I think, help distinguish this being a fat character as well versus this character being a more skinny character. Let me see, we got a question in the chat here. I don't see you using the Loomis figure wireframe. Where did you learn about that mannequin form you're using? Does Loomis have a book that describes how to use it? That's a good question. I think, so I learned this technique from breaking down just from my own studies of drawing the human body and stuff. But I actually also learned this technique from one of my mentors / teachers, Kevin Chen, from CDA, Concept Design Academy. And so he actually talked about breaking down the forms into these simple shapes and stuff. And so I learned a lot of these simplifications from him and then applying that into your own animation. That's a good question. But again, a lot of these simplifications are really just basic shapes like cylinders, boxes, spheres. That's really kind of what I'm going for, right? I'm not doing too much here that I think is too crazy. And if you kind of use that and apply that to your illustrations, you can do so much with these simplified mannequins. You can go ahead and obviously change some of the shapes, but you can also use it for proportions, right? If you want to get into drawing out the different types of characters that you might have, and you can kind of, utilize these shapes for that, but you can also use it for perspective and being able to draw different characters in different scenes by first focusing on some of these simplified shapes. So here for this one, the big difference also is going to be on the gut section there. So we're going to definitely give this kid a little bit more of a rounder belly, right? So adding in here a little bit of stomach fat there. And again, for those of you who are curious about body fat and all of the distribution and stuff, you'll find that actually there's a big difference between males and females when it comes to body fat distribution. Now, when it comes to kids, it's not going to vary too much, but when it comes to drawing a male character, as you increase your body fat, most of the body fat you're going to see is going to be surrounding the gut area right here. You'll see this in the size of the legs there, and on the back side, you'll be seeing it kind of that muffin top section right here, as well as the back side of the glutes. So kind of the obliques right here, the glutes, and then the stomach area. This is going to be very helpful when it comes to increasing the fat of your characters, because if you take a look at, for example, the female character, right, you'll actually see that a lot of the body fat distribution you'll see in female characters is going to be really on the legs. Like a large majority of that is going to be in the legs. And so as you increase body fat on a female character, you'll start to see a lot more curvature in that section of the lower body, as well as the armpits, this section right there. And so paying attention to those subtle differences will actually help you out, and also distinguishing and making your characters look and feel more unique overall. So in this case right here, I'm going to be kind of giving him a little bit of a bigger gut here, you know, just to kind of add some chunkiness there, but I'm not going to be doing too much that it starts to feel like it's, you know, going out of the style here of the design that we're going for. So we're still keeping it within the style, but I'm also going to be, you know, placing in some of that fat there. And let's see here. Yeah, welcome in everybody who's coming in here. Glad to have you guys hanging out here, and I hope you guys enjoy the streams so far. It seems to me that the flow of the fatter character is more curvy, where the muscle sticks to the bone. Ooh, that's a good observation, Lazy Lettuce. Where the muscle sticks to the bone. So I think, you know, you can definitely apply curvature in a lot of places. And so there can definitely be some truth to that, because what's happening here is for the bonier areas, those bonier areas are going to create some concavity, right? And so when you have, for example, this area right here of that pelvis, right, which is going to be a little bit more bony, and then the fat's going to go wrap around it, what's going to happen is it's going to actually kind of create these indents on the body here where they kind of curve back into these bony sections, as you were saying. Like it's going to curve back into the knee right here. And then you're going to see some more fat. And then that fat's going to curve back into the bony section there of the ankle. So that's an interesting observation, and one that I actually haven't thought of. But now that I'm looking at it, that's actually exactly what's going on here, right? You have kind of the areas of fat where you have the muscle and all that stuff. And then you're going to kind of curve back in there and push back into the areas that are a little bit more bony overall. And those are going to be usually around the joint areas. So the joints there of the hips, joints there of the knees, the ankles, and then we'll probably see some of that as well on the arms too. And thank you for the prime sub, Cinna V, appreciate that. Thank you for the follow as well too. Do I know Kuya? Yeah, I know Kuya JP. I think he's been around on Twitch for a bit of time. You know, I think a lot of us streamers, interestingly enough, I feel like we kind of interact with each other to one point, you know, or another. Like there's not a lot of, if you think about it, there's actually not a lot of art streamers on Twitch compared to the whole platform overall. And there's definitely not a lot of streamers on Twitch who've been streaming for a bit of time. So I've been streaming on Twitch for a little bit over 3 years now. And so you could imagine, you know, there's not a lot of us who've been streaming for that bit of time. But when we do stay that long, we kind of get to know each other a little bit more. So here we're going to go in and kind of add just some chunkiness for this character. Maybe for this one, I'll kind of put the cylinder down here, and we'll kind of just draw the arms going down. So that way we have an example here of an arms down pose, as well as a kind of arms on their side type of pose too, you know. Or maybe we'll draw one. Maybe we'll do one with and without. I'll think about it. I'm going to erase some of the lines here that we have. So let me go ahead and get rid of this. Goodbye. Or let me do it like this. But yeah, let me see if there's anything else I wanted to call out here before we get into drawing the rest of the body. Now, again, I do want to remind you guys that part of the interesting things you can do as well is you can definitely use shape design here to help and kind of inform a little bit more about the character design overall. So one of the things that I did when I was drawing the first example earlier before the video was really just utilizing the shapes there of a rectangular form, and even the face, I would give it more of a rectangular form. The torso is a little bit more rectangular, right, vertically. And so for that example, we're going to be doing that. And then I think for the third example, which I'm hoping we have some time for today, I'm going to be using probably a little bit more of a boxy structure, but maybe more of a triangular look as well too. So we'll see how all of that kind of comes together out here. So here I'm going to kind of just give him a little bit more fat, like right here. And then, you know, just adding in a little bit there, but not too much where it starts to feel like I think it's going to be breaking the kind of the realism or the realistic style that we're trying to go for. So he's not super chunky. Okay, maybe he is. Maybe he is a little bit chunky, on the chunkier side. So let me kind of give him a bit more volume there. Hey, how's it going, Living Shadow? Welcome back in. Your voice is always so soothing. Thank you. Appreciate that. It's the morning the morning voice, which I should be drinking tea for. But for those of you who are watching right now, let me ask you a question. What time is it? What time is it for you right now, for those of you who are here watching? Because right now, for me, it's 9:30 a.m. in the morning. First thing I do when I wake up is stream on Twitch. Is it nighttime? Let me think. So I know there's a good number of you who are watching from Europe. So for sure, there's probably like afternoon-ish, right? I'm trying to think. What time is it over there in Europe? Afternoon, maybe evening already. There's not a lot of, I know there's not a lot of people here who are watching from like the Philippines or Australia, because if you were watching right now, it's probably like 2 a.m. for you. And in that case, I have no clue what you're doing here. Like, what are you watching me at 2 a.m. for? That's insane. 10 p.m. bed, time for bed. Where is that? 10 p.m. Let me think. Maybe like South Asia-ish area? Possibly. 6:30, 6:25. Okay. 12:27. What is that? East Coast time? 9:27. Okay. You just finished work time? Chubby buddies for the win. Yeah, we're drawing some chubby bodies out here, and it's honestly, I feel like, again, this is, I feel like it's fun to be able to draw different types of bodies and be able to kind of practice as well too. Like, if you guys are, let's say for example, having a hard time, right? You're having a hard time drawing your characters and you feel kind of stuck, and let's say I always use this one as an example, not just as a meme, but I think it's actually a pretty common thing. But let's say, for example, you're really good at drawing anime waifus, but you're struggling at drawing any other type of character, right? If you're good at drawing anime waifus, how about you try drawing different types of anime waifus? Draw some short anime waifus, draw some thick anime waifus, some skinny ones, draw some old ones, right? And so there's actually a lot of diversity that you can do even within one type of character to be able to kind of practice and improve your skills overall. So let me move, I'm going to move this hand or this arm. Oops. No snapping. We don't want the snap out here. Kind of like that. So I kind of want to open it out a bit more so that way I can lay the thumb. I want to lay the thumb on the hip there, like so. There you go. Nice. Very good. I like it. All right, so with all of that here, I'm going to go ahead now and kind of clean this one up a little bit. Or actually, let me add the head. Can't forget to add the head there. But I'm going to clean this one up as well, and so that way you guys can kind of see how this one starts to look, and we can kind of make some comparisons here, right? Start to notice some of the subtle differences here between drawing, let's say, a skinny character, skinny kid there, versus drawing a chunkier kid, right? And let me actually, I'm going to bring this arm, I'm going to bring this one a little bit lower, so that way it's less awkwardly jutting out and more kind of like towards this side, like this. Yeah, I think that makes a little bit more sense for his pose overall. You're here from Paris. Oh, shout out to my viewers from Paris. Nepal, South Asia. Hey, see, I'm pretty good with time and stuff. That's cool. Shout out to my viewers from Nepal. So let me go ahead here and kind of wrap out the form. Let me kind of maybe add a little bit of a cylinder look here, right, for his arm and stuff. And May, welcome in. Thanks for the follow. Everything burrito. What is in an everything burrito? Everything, I guess. Boo. Because when I think everything burrito, I'm thinking like an everything bagel, but burrito form. Which honestly, I don't know if I'm vibing with that. How do I get the right proportions for the hand and feet for kids? I think it depends on the style and stuff, but I would say to take a look at, if you want to follow this style, take a look at this example here. Now, really quick, guys, I do run ads on my stream every hour, and one's going to be running right about now. So if you do get an ad, thank you again for sticking around for the ad break. They do help keep my streams monetarily viable and allow me to do what I'm doing out here on Twitch. But if you don't want to see any ads, consider subscribing or using a Prime sub. But either way, thank you for your support, and I hope to see you guys after the ad break. So thank you. What's my dog's name? My dog's name is Arrow. He's an Akita, and he just sleeps. He's chilling out here. Yeah, I don't know if you guys, some of you guys might not even have noticed, but I have a dog. I got a dog over there. He just sleeps all day. All day, every day. That's him. But I watched the video, and apparently dogs sleeping all the time is actually a good sign of comfortability and overall happiness. So I'm not mad. I'm not mad. Let him sleep. If he's feeling comfy, if he's feeling cozy, all right. But also I do know that oftentimes just bigger dogs just love to sleep. That's just their thing. It's like a very big dog thing to just sleep all the time. All right. So I'm just going in here and kind of tweaking the mannequin a little bit more. Just kind of exaggerating that belly and that, you know, that torso region right here. I'm not too sure exactly where I want to place it just yet, but I feel like somewhere around here seems good to me. Okay, nice. Makes sense. I love to sleep too. I mean, I like to sleep too. I'm too busy. I feel like I haven't slept in a long time, you know, just like genuinely sleeping in and not worrying about when to wake up. But I don't know. I think it's not necessarily a problem because I think I'm a morning person. And so I personally enjoy waking up early and actually doing all my things in the middle of the day or during the day and not in the middle of the day. So actually, I don't know. I like waking up nice and early to get stuff done. But I guess that also means I end up sleeping a little bit earlier as well too. Also, thank you for the follow, Christini Panini. A lot of great names today. Also, Ghostfires, Omi Ro, and everyone else who's coming in here. Let me give you guys a quick little intro about myself for those of you guys who are here for the first time. Let me do that in 3, 2, 1. What is up, everybody who's coming here? Welcome in. My name is Kaycem. I am a Filipino art streamer here on Twitch, teaching everything from anatomy, gesture, perspective to all things related to character design. And I also work full-time in the animation industry for the studio that made Castlevania. Currently, right now, I'm prepping to work as a designer on shows such as Castlevania, Legend of Korra, and Invincible. So if you guys are interested in some free art education, you guys like anime or animation, or you just like dogs who sleep all day every day, make sure to leave a follow out here on Twitch. And if you are watching from YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe. And I hope you guys are enjoying the content so far. But there you go. That's my little intro there. Dishes everything. That was nice to Jake. I see. Oh, from Adventure Time. For sure. Got it. Good old Adventure Time. But all right, let me go ahead and tweak some of the proportions here of the shoulders, and then we'll get into drawing out the head here. But already you can kind of see here, we've got a pretty chunky character, right? Not too bad. And a lot of it, again, is focused on kind of leveraging some of those rounder shapes, really giving him a rounder kind of a build there, rounder hips overall, but not too round where he either one feels like he's feminine or it doesn't, or it looks like it's not proportionally accurate, right? So again, we're going for more of like a semi-realistic look here. So for this approach, I still want to keep some of the form there. But let me go ahead and draw the head in, and I think we're pretty much good to go for this one. And thank you for the follows today too. Macaron. Appreciate that. Let's see. Nice to meet you. I love Legend of Korra and of course Avatar in general. You went to college for animation, but you never went anywhere with it. Oh, really? Well, I hope you enjoy today's content, and I hope you enjoy the stream overall. I do a lot of teaching out here on Twitch, so I hope that's what some of you guys are interested in, because if you're not, that's okay too. But that is what we cover out here on my streams, and so expect a lot of education and tutorials and stuff. But it's not like a boring class, you know. I'm not trying to make it a class where it's like, oh man, I have to be here and this sucks, you know. I try to make it as interesting as I can and as engaging as I can. So I hope that you find it helpful. And welcome in. Wow, welcome in everyone who's coming here. Ashen, Ghostfires. I'd love to know for those of you guys who are here today, how did you find my stream? Please do let me know in the chat if you found it through recommended, if you found it through the front page of Twitch, if you found it through, let me think, my YouTube channel, which by the way, I have a YouTube channel for, so you guys can check out my YouTube videos and all that stuff. But yeah, let me know how you came across my content. I want to play around here. I want to see how it might look like if we gave him I'm just testing things out, you know, we're experimenting right now, but I want to see how it looks like if we really gave him like just kind of a thicker neck. I don't know if it'll look right with the style, but you know, we'll see. Maybe not. Maybe it's too thick for this style at least. Like we can make it thick, but not too thick. Like that might be okay. Powerhouse Studio, are they interested in a one-of series about a three-way death match between Jollibee versus Ronald versus Burger King? Look, if all three franchises came to Powerhouse and requested an anime commercial, I have no doubts. And again, I don't speak for the company, I don't speak for the studio, so take what I say with a grain of salt. But I have a feeling that if people came to Powerhouse, if McDonald's, Burger King, and Jollibee came to Powerhouse and said, hey, we want to do a three-way anime series, quick little, you know, light mini clips for a commercial, will you do it? 100%. I feel like they would. I would be like, I'd volunteer. I'd be like, hey, let me drop what I'm working on right now and let me work on this once in a lifetime collab. You know, I can see it. And it would look super insane and intense for all the right reasons. it'd be the weirdest like fever dream of a story, but it sounds fun. You looked up digital art? Oh, nice. Let's see here. Sorry if I missed it, but I see the ankle area has kind of an extra part to it, but wrist doesn't. Is that just preference? The ankle area has an extra part to it. This one right here, but the wrist doesn't. The ankle area. You mean like this like bony structure here? Oh, this is just how I denote. Maybe this is just how I denote the bone there. But oftentimes I think so on the wrist bone there, you have the ulna and the radius. And for fatter characters like this, you're not going to see as much of a bony structure, if that's what you're referring to. Whereas with the ankles, you will see a little bit more of that. Now, I am going to soften out here. I did want to soften this one out because now that I'm kind of going back in, you know, for this chunky character here, we're going to round it out a little bit more there, but let me kind of go in and also do this too. Yeah, let me know if that's what you were referring to. Kind of the joint area possibly. You try to learn by watching and schooling my eyes while eating, so I'm watching streams. Ah, I see. Nice. What am I drawing with? I'm drawing with an iPad currently right now. Your intro would be so different. I'm currently working on the studio that brought you the fast food death match. Yeah, it'd be a very different intro. if I did it that way, for sure, if I worked on that project. But honestly, I think what's really cool about my intro is I feel like over time, as I start working on more projects and stuff, I'll probably tweak it. And I have a few projects that I would definitely love to work on. I've recently gotten into D&D and stuff, and so I would love a chance to work on a Legends of Vox Machina season, or even a Mighty Nine season. Woo-wee! I don't know which studio is working on Mighty Nine. I wonder if it's Titmouse. If so, that's super crazy. But yeah, I would love to work on something like that at some point in time. All right, but anyways, let's go in here, and I think we've got our overall look and feel for this body type. Nice chunky character here, a bit of the rounder shapes overall, right? Much more softer in volume, you can kind of see there. And I'm going to try to push it even further and see if we can kind of round out some of the forms. But you can kind of see how we're leveraging here a lot of curvature, right? Curvature is going to be the name of the game here for drawing a bit more of a chunky, fatter character, as opposed to drawing a much more skinny character that we have there on the right side. So let me go ahead and clean this one up. I'm going to add in here some of the colors, and then I think we'll be ready to move on to the final example, which is going to be more of like an athletic build for our character. And thank you for the follows to Mikrito, Ashen, and everyone else right here who's been coming in. So what dictates where you draw the folds of fat and where it droops down? Well, what dictates it is where the body fat's going to be, right? So again, looking at the male example here, for a male character, body fat distribution is going to be slightly different than a female character. And so males will oftentimes have their body fat here around the oblique section and kind of that lower chunk there of the abdominals. And so you'll see some of that body fat really kind of overlapping the forms. You'll see not really as much in the inner thighs, but more on the outer thighs there and kind of that rounder section there, the backside. And so you'll see more of like a boxier increase in the legs. Whereas with females, you'll see a little bit more of curvature and volume there on the hips. And so understanding where the body fat is going to be and how you should increase that body fat will lead to where you're going to be adding overlaps and folds and stuff for your character overall. Hopefully that answers your question. That's a great question there about body fat and stuff. Now, I'm not going to go ahead here again and draw the faces, at least not yet. If we have some time towards the end of the stream, maybe we'll take some time there to draw. But otherwise, we're going to go ahead here and leave it at that. And let me just kind of add some colors on here to make this one look a little bit more visibly appealing. And then I think we'll be good to go to working on the next example. All right. And let's see here. Black Lotus, thanks for the follow. I plan to open a 2D animation studio in the Philippines in 3 years. Oh, that'd be super sick. Props to that. I'd want to see that be successful. I wish you the best of success, because I feel like honestly there's a lot of good talents overseas, and I think it's great to see more artists from around the world getting their recognition and being able to produce and work on shows, you know, that are seen in a more international stage. I know there was something recently I watched, like I think it was last year, I watched an animated series called Trece, which is based off of like a bunch of Filipino lore and stuff. And it's, I think, from Filipino comic artists. And so it was super cool to see that make it to a larger audience overall. So more power to you. Wishing you the best. I too, eventually one of these days, want to open up my own studio, but probably not anytime soon, maybe in like 5 years. I think after about 5 years of working in the industry, maybe I'll be ready. Maybe I'll be ready to open up my own thing, and I will try to focus more on projects that maybe highlight the diversity of people. Because I think if I actually take a look at some of the cartoons that really stuck to me growing up as a kid were actually ones that had a lot of Asian representation. Because if you guys didn't know, I'm Filipino, you know, so Asian, Pacific Islander and stuff. But for example, stuff like Jackie Chan Adventures, Shaolin Showdown, American Dragon Jake Long were things that I watched growing up that I felt like weren't just animations, but really kind of had a special place in my heart, because it was like, wow, these characters kind of look like me, or they kind of have kind of that Asian vibe. And I don't know. I think seeing more projects like that would be super sick. And not just because, like, I don't know, it's hard to say. Like, I've seen some projects that kind of push the diversity agenda, and I want to make a good story, not just because it's Asian characters, but because I want to tell stories about, you know, the Asian culture and the experience, the Asian experience. So I don't know. There you go. That's just my thing, but that's not happening anytime soon. Just something that I think about on a regular basis. Thanks for the follow, Swift Arctic Fox. Welcome in, and thank you for the follows. Hopefully you enjoy the stream so far. But yeah, we've got here Chunky Boy versus Skinny Boy. And I think the builds are not going to be too different. So thankfully, when it comes to drawing children versus drawing adults, I would say that the proportions of children are going to be kind of similar, actually, when it comes to male versus female. So like girl versus boy proportions are not going to change too much, because a lot of the features that make characters more feminine are going to be developing later. And similarly, the more muscular features that you might see in a male character, the boxy features, are going to be happening a little bit later as well, as you kind of grow in your adolescence. So you can actually probably use a lot of the variety here that we have for also drawing a female character, though I might tweak a few of the things just a tad bit. So if this was like a female character, I might still give it like thicker hips still, you know, just slightly, not too much, because again, it's still a younger character. But I might do that. I might add more body fat there on the thighs than what we had for the male character. So children are 5 heads. Not necessarily, but in the style that we're covering here, in the style that I'm teaching, these children tend to often be 5 heads tall. But if you ever do study the proportions of like, for example, a realistic human reference here, right? This one right here is about 6 heads tall because they're a little bit older. But I've also done some breakdowns where, for example, here, this kid who's a little bit younger is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 heads tall as well, right? So you'll kind of see here how you can play around with the proportions and stuff. You can do 6 heads tall, you can do 5 heads tall. I think 5 heads tall is usually reserved for more younger characters, whereas 6 heads tall, you'll see that more in kind of like maybe middle school-ish kids and stuff. So, you know, it's really up to you, up to your preference of what you want to use. But again, today's stream is not like a how to draw in the avatar style, more so a how to observe drawing different types of characters and the approach that I go for, and how you can then apply that to your own style, right? So it's more about understanding and training your eye to see different things, and less about the technical, you have to draw a child in 5 heads tall. Does that make sense? Let me know in the chat, because again, that's not the purpose of the stream here. It's not like all children characters must be 5 heads tall. But I will say there are going to be some features of children that I think will be consistent in a lot of different styles. For example, you'll see oftentimes a lot of children will have bigger and wider foreheads because they're still growing into their skull. You'll see that they have large eyes and ears because the rate of how ears and eyes grow are going to be a little bit slower than the rest of the features of the face. You'll see that they have a flatter nose because the bone here of the nasal bone and the bone ridge, that kind of bone brow there, isn't grown in fully yet. You'll also see that they have maybe smaller mouths and chins. So there are going to be some consistencies that you'll see across the board. But again, it's less about this is the only way to draw children, and more about different ways to start thinking about drawing children and breaking down the proportions and all of that stuff. But yeah, thank you for all the follows, by the way. Samey by Carolina and Vera Arts. Thank you so much for coming in here today. And I'd love to know how you guys found my stream. Was it from recommended? Was it from front page? Was it from my YouTube channel, perhaps? Remember, guys, children characters have to be half as big as their as their weapon of choice in an action cartoon at minimum. Yeah, like if you take a look at a lot of shows, you know, they'll definitely exaggerate some of the features for kids, and they'll even like you said, they'll give them like a crazy big weapon to make them look and feel even smaller, right? So a lot of different things you can do to merely make a character look and feel younger. But there you go. We've got here another example that we've knocked out. So we've done here a chunky character, a skinny character. Let's go do one more with you guys, and I think we'll be good for today's video. So the last one we're going to be covering here is the athletic build. Good old Benny the Jet Rodriguez over here. And so let's go ahead and take a look at this example. Let me just move some things around here. We'll do it like that. And then I'll bring it back. I'll bring back all three. We could take a look at them together. Boom, boom, boom. Make those comparisons and all that good stuff. Great lessons, man. Inspiring work you're doing. Love to see artists bringing stories and inspirations from their cultural mythology and folklore. Thank you. Thank you, Cinna. I think there's definitely value in adding that in, you know, and I know it sounds maybe cliche to say, but I do think representation does matter a lot. Do short people have kid proportions, or do they grow minimally? Now that's a great question. Let's cover that really quick. So really kind of a quick aside here. What's the difference between a short character and a kid character, right? And I would actually say the biggest difference is going to be in how wide a character is. Notice here how the width of I'll see if I can do it with this one just from kind of doing some tweaks here, but notice how the width here of this character is going to be roughly about 1.5 heads to 2 heads tall. Usually you'll see a character like, let's say, a dwarf or a, you know, kind of a shorter character overall. They're going to actually have a bit of a wider build than maybe what you might see with a kid. Even wider than this, probably. Let me kind of like change some of this. They'll have a bit of a wider build overall, and that way they'll kind of have like human-like width, but overall shorter features lengthwise. And so you kind of have like this weird comparison there where you have like a, you know, I'll have to change the arms and stuff, but I'm just going to do a quick kind of liquefy here to show the point, right? So you'll kind of want to make the characters look and feel a bit wider overall, but the head and the proportions are going to still roughly look the same. So if you take a look at Legends of Vox Machina, does a really good job of this, and look at a character like Scanlan over here, you'll notice that this character is a bit wider, right? A little bit wider there of a build than maybe this character right here, which is really skinny, right? So the width is going to change a great amount there for a character that might be just a short character as opposed to a child character. Hopefully that makes sense. And let me just put that away. But okay, let's go ahead and draw one more example. This time we're going to go for maybe more of like a triangular build here. And triangular is going to be a little bit subjective because I think we're going to be seeing some of the proportions and shapes still kind of be consistent overall, but I'll kind of vary it out a little bit. So maybe we'll go for like a wider stance here for this character. Let's see here. Appreciate you going through examples always. Yeah. And again, if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask, you know. I try to keep my streams as conversational as possible. So feel free to ask questions about what we're covering today, questions about what we're doing on the streams, questions about me if you're curious about who I am and what I do. And yeah, anything like that, honestly. Let's see here. I have a question. How does one draw a character who is a kid with Hutchinson's Guilford Progeria syndrome? A genetic condition characterized by the dramatic rapid appearance of aging beginning in childhood. Should the character designer use a proportion of a kid but add elderly facial features? I think that makes sense to me. You know, you give them kind of elderly facial features. Maybe it's also in the gesture. So if a character, for example, looks like they're supposed to be old but still childlike, you might make them hunch over more. I don't know much about the syndrome to be able to accurately tell you what to do, but I would say if you're trying to draw a character that is elderly but still looks like a child, I would say definitely playing around with the face proportions can do a whole lot there. Maybe making them have a little bit more of looser skin could also be helpful too. So it all varies, I would say. Yeah, that's an interesting and very specific question that I don't have a clear concise answer for, unfortunately. But I would say, yeah, do some research and see how people with this syndrome look like, and what are the main characteristics. If it's that they just look like they have an older face and stuff, then maybe that's what you might want to apply in your own designs for your character. So for this one right here, I'm going to try to draw kind of a more lean but still muscular look, but I'm really going to be focusing here on kind of the drastic kind of tapers for a child that maybe is a little bit more on the athletic side, right? So kind of exaggerating there and taking from the skinny build that we had earlier, but now kind of putting in here a little bit more of a triangular shape. So you can kind of see here, if you've ever seen Ethan Becker, he talks about this technique called the lemon wedge technique, right? This little triangular techniques here. And you'll actually see that that's kind of what I'm using as well. So kind of breaking up here the forms and pushing in some of those shape designs, so that way we get curvature, but it's more of a triangular curvature. Whereas the other examples we've had are more boxy and or round, right? So playing around with shape design can also make it really easy to be able to get some interesting shapes and looks there for your characters overall. So let's go ahead and do one leg. We'll put that there. Boom, boom, boom. And then we'll do the other leg. Maybe we'll do it so that way the hip, I'm going to give him a little bit of a contrapposta pose. So like we have one leg kind of going this way like so. And then the other leg is going to maybe jut out just a tad bit to kind of give it more of a contrapposta, semi-relaxed, but give it a bit of a dynamic look and feel, right? Like maybe he might even have, maybe we can have it so that he's holding like a baseball bat like this. Ooh. Ooh, okay, we're getting creative now. We're thinking, we're being like artists now. But let me ask you guys a question, all right? Let me see here if I can ask you guys a question. What is something right now that you are struggling with currently with your art? What is something that you're like, man, Kaycem, I feel like I'm really having a hard time with drawing hair or the body? Because I want to see here, for those of you who've been watching and stuff, you know, what are the things that you as artists right now are currently dealing with that you would maybe like more help on? Because I think understanding my audience as well can also help me see what I can be focusing on overall. Really giving him longer legs. Or it's not even that he has longer legs, it's more of the illusion that he has longer legs because he's just skinnier overall. So it's kind of interesting because if you take a look at the proportions we've drawn, the characters' proportions are actually they're all similar in like length and stuff. It's just adding in, for example, a tapering to the leg or adding in a bit more thickness can actually make it look like they're shorter or whatever have you. So it's kind of interesting how body fat and stuff can also change how a lot of that looks like and feels as well. And hey, thank you for the follows. Vera Art, By Carolina, RDP, and Nemophobe. Appreciate all that. Anatomy, hair, chubby shapes. Okay, cool. So we did some of that. Hopefully that's helpful. Eyes that point in the same direction. Eyes that point in the same direction. Like they're looking in the same direction, perhaps. BST Arc, thanks for the follow as well. Forearms, interesting, forearms. The waist area of a female, huh? Struggling with drawing clothings on the body. Ah, we'll be doing a lot of clothing studies in a future boot camp for sure. Not anytime soon, actually. We probably won't draw clothing for a bit of time now that I think about it, but we will eventually. We'll get back into drawing some clothing examples for you guys as we get into my third boot camp, which will probably be happening. If we're going at the pace that we're going now, this boot camp should probably finish at around mid-June, which means we'll have time for another boot camp for June, July, August. And that'll be kind of like the fall boot camp. So this is kind of like the I guess this is like the spring boot camp. So this is going to be spring boot camp. And then we have the summer boot camp, which will be more about clothing and drawing different types of characters, like different archetypes, as well as different genres. And then I don't know what we're doing for the fourth boot camp, because that is so far from now that I've not yet thought about it. It's a little bit of ways. A bit of ways away. Struggle with curly hair. I only started drawing humans recently. Okay, nice. And it took me a while to really understand how the face works, if that makes sense, because I had a hard time understanding. I see. I had trouble with poses, anatomy, proportions, and drawing in perspective, fundamentals as a whole. Oh, nice. Well, that is perfect, because that's exactly what my first boot camp covers. Standard eye shapes, which makes placing the pupils and irises more difficult. Ah, I see. So I think what might be helpful to you then, if you're drawing kind of a pretty, like unique style or kind of a very stylized shape design and stuff for your eyes, is trying to see how you can break down your version of the anatomy of a character, and understanding that will, I think, help you be able to then construct the look from different angles. Because again, anatomy, can be whatever you want to represent it to be. It doesn't have to be the anatomy that you might see in the textbook. Like, we can definitely warp some things out, play with the proportions and the shapes. So that's what I would say personally. But let me go ahead here and I'll warp some things out before we get into drawing out the rest of the body here. But overall, I'm going for a more, again, triangular look by pulling in certain shapes and kind of adding in curvatures here in certain areas, but I'm not doing too much in the sense that it's going to look like, it's going to look like the rounded character or look like it's too off. So we're kind of going in here and taking the forms of, for example, the rounded shapes, but I'm also going in and kind of tapering it back in. So you're really going to get kind of these exaggerated, almost heroic proportions for your characters, right? So we're going to see like this kind of sharper tapering there, right? So if you were to line up all the characters that we've drawn so far, I would argue that this one right here is going to be more of a triangular shape design, whereas the other two might be, this one's more of a rounder shape design, and then the first one was more of a boxy shape design, right? So not only can you utilize proportions and stuff, but utilizing shapes, utilizing gesture and rhythm, all of these different things together can really start to piece out a character design that is going to be different each time. So it's kind of fun, kind of interesting, I think. Let's see here. Getting the different angles of my character and different motions and tasks has been difficult, mainly in perspective and angles. So I think tomorrow's stream, we're actually going to be drawing characters from different angles. So hopefully, hopefully that will be helpful to you to be able to see that. So I'll be showing you guys how to draw the characters in profile, how to draw them in front view, which we've already done now, how to draw them in maybe a 3/4 view and maybe back view as well. So yeah, you just started the program. How did you get the body to push like you did? It's a feature called Liquify. So you can go to the settings and you'll be able to probably see the setting there at the bottom. It's one of the effects called Liquify tool. It's a pretty common tool. Yeah, you'll see not only in Procreate, but you'll see it also in Photoshop, CSP, Though I do think that, surprisingly, I think Procreate does it best, because for some reason with Photoshop and CSP, Liquify only works on a per layer basis, which I think is stupid. They should give you an option to liquefy the whole canvas or the whole image, but whatever. Anyways, that's just me ranting about tools that I use for work. In terms of Procreate, yeah, it's basically called the Liquify tool, and you can check that one out. Let's see here. Right now I'm trying to get better at having good gestures and good form at the same time. That's a good thing to practice. Practicing good gesture and good form at the same time is one that I studied a lot when I was first starting out, for sure. So for this one, maybe what I'll do is I'll try to kind of give him a little bit of a kind of a sharper shoulder there. But again, a lot of these kids are not going to have a lot of muscle, because even for, you know, even for a more muscular kid, you kind of have to be cautious there because there's not really a lot of muscle to work with. Now I'm going to give a little bit of the denotion of muscle to really exaggerate that, but not too much, because it's still, again, at the end of the day, we're still drawing children. So going in here and drawing some crazy biceps, triceps, deltoids, and all of that stuff might not actually make sense for the designs that we're trying to draw. Also, thank you for the follow, Hongo. Welcome in. What software does Powerhouse use for drawing and animation? We primarily use Clip Studio Paint. Like, Powerhouse really loves Clip Studio Paint for some reason. And we also use Harmony, so like Toon Boom, for Storyboard Pro as well. We also use Adobe After Effects for compositing work. So a good variety, honestly, but primarily CSP is the one that most of the artists are going to be using and leveraging and stuff. Yeah. You kind of want to work at Powerhouse now? Powerhouse is a really cool company, or a really cool studio to work for. There's a lot of different projects that we're working on. I think everyone is super nice, and I think a lot of people who know Powerhouse know about Powerhouse because of, you know, Castlevania and the super dope things that Castlevania has done. So I feel very proud when I tell people that I work at Powerhouse, because I don't know, I think they make a lot of cool stuff, and yeah, cool stuff, cool dope projects and shows. Though again, I can't tell you guys, well, I can tell you guys, but I don't want to tell you guys what the show is that I'm working on, because I don't want you guys to ask questions that you will never get the answers to, if that makes any sense. And so Soterios, thank you for the follow as well too. CSP has an animating feature too? Yes, and we use some of that as well for sure. Any specific reasons for the love of CSP compared to, say, Krita or Photoshop? I think CSP has a lot of good features that are, I think, better and more robust than a program like Krita, but it's also cheaper than a program like Photoshop. I think they don't tell you that you can't use Photoshop, like you can use Photoshop, but they prefer most people just use CSP because it's easier and cheaper to buy a one-time license than to what's it called, to pay monthly and stuff to pay monthly for Adobe software. I think that's mostly it. But I would say CSP is pretty industry standard. Yeah, it's a pretty industry standard tool at this point in time. I think a lot of people are opening up to using CSP. But anyways, here we've got now this we've got here the triangular form, right? So we went from let's see here, we went from lanky boy to triangular, more fit boy. And so I'm showing you guys again a lot of different body types here, not because I'm trying to show you guys how to draw in this style, but just showing you how to start thinking about drawing your characters from the proportions all the way to how you start thinking about shape design and that overall kind of look and feel. So I do think we have a lot of time. I don't know why, but I guess I'm drawing faster today, which is good for me. I'm happy about that, which means we should have a lot of time here to actually go add some clothing and maybe bump up the designs a little bit more, you know, true them up a little bit, so that way they look slightly more interesting than these simple blue and yellow mannequins that we have over here, right? You use ABA, anything but Adobe. That's so great. I love it. And also CDMTTY, Zambui, and everyone else is coming in here. So Deadly Pichu has a question: how do you find your style? So that's a great question, which I think is a twofold answer. The first answer to your question is, it's an interesting, tricky question in the sense that everyone technically already has a style. The way that I think about an art style isn't that it's something that you just like how something looks like. In some way it is that. To me, style is all about the collective decisions that an artist makes to create the image that they're going to create, right? It can go from how you draw hair to the type of lines you use for your image, to the techniques you use for coloring, to even the type of subjects you draw. Maybe you're really interested in drawing sci-fi characters, whereas somebody is more interested in drawing slice of life shoujo schoolgirls, right? That in itself is also a style. And so in a way, we already have a style, but as you are developing your skills as an artist, you tend to start to choose and lean towards specific techniques and approaches, which then become consistent in your productions, in your works that you make, right? So a beginner artist might not have a consistent style or approach yet. And so for a beginner, you might not be able to see some of the consistency in your work, right? You look at your work and you're kind of like, all of these things are all over the place, right? So that is the first answer I'll give. But that's also a cop-out answer because, as you guys have known from my streams, if you ever want to work in animation, for example, you're going to have to learn how to draw in another style, right? If you're working in SpongeBob one day, and then the next day you're working on, let's say, something like Legend of Korra, you're going to have to be, as an artist, be able to study and learn how to draw in that style of that production and show. So interestingly enough, you can learn and acquire another style. And the ways that you can do that is by, one, breaking down the proportions of your characters, seeing how the artists use the lines, how are they conveying details. And I'll show you an example of this because take a look. A lot of the details and structures for the shows that you're seeing are not random. So watch this, right? If you take, for example, the end of the brows right here, I'll do it on this one first. End of the brows, like so, right? And you line them up. Look at how they line up right here on this, on the hairline. They line up right here, but then they're also going to line up right here on the eyes. And so these are intentional designs that the character designers have made. Because, watch this. You can take the same thing here, line them up right here, line them up here, line them up here, like so, right? But then there's also other things too. Notice how, for example, things are parallel right here for the brows, parallel right here for the nose and the mouth, and also even parallel right here for the hairline and the overall gesture of the hair, right? So these are all intentional designs that the artists make. Even to the number of tufts that are in a hairstyle are important. So understanding how and why artists are making their intentions can help you be able to also find your own style. So for those of you who are, for example, you're like, okay, well, I'm a beginner, Kaycem, right? And I follow other tutorials on how to draw other people's styles and stuff. If you want to be able to really develop your own style, take the two things I just told you, right? Look at the things that you like to draw and start asking yourself, okay, what are the things that I really care about? Do I like drawing eyes this way? Do I like drawing hair that way? Do I like to have sketchy, loose types of drawings? Or do I like to have a line art look? And then whenever you go and look at other artists that you like, maybe on Instagram or social media or TV or whatever have you, ask yourself, what do I like about the art that I'm seeing? If you're looking at an artist on Instagram and you're like, wow, I really like how they drew the hair, see if you can try to bring some of how they draw their hair onto your own style. And then eventually over time, what you'll naturally have is a bunch of collective decisions, maybe from different styles or different influences, as well as your own choices. And that in itself will become your style. And as you progress as an artist, again, it'll refine and that might change. Maybe you draw noses one way for a year, and then the next year you draw something completely different, right? So there you go. That is what I will say about how do you find your style in a very short and concise way. I think it's an interesting trick question because, again, you already have your style, but at the same time, there are things you can do to increase your choices that you make when it comes to drawing certain types of things. I hope that was helpful, and thank you for the follows. Don't Shoot Me Bro, Doll WY, Alex Theron B, Astro, Zambui, and everyone else who's been following. So many follows today. How does one study style? Again, there's so many different ways to study style, right? So you can take a look at how an artist uses lines. You can take away at how they draw their proportions. You can take a look at how they use their colors, right? So there's no right or wrong way to study, but I think it all starts with understanding understanding what it is you like about the artist's style that you're trying to make a study of, and then from there focus on those aspects, right? Because sure, it's helpful to do like a master study and just copy the image and see how if you can copy the image, but I think it's actually more beneficial to be able to pick one thing at a time and then focus on those particular things. Hopefully that makes some sense there. And also, for those of you who are coming in here, I know it's there's a good number of you, so let me give a quick little intro. But for those of you coming in here, my name is Kaycem. I am a Filipino art streamer here on Twitch. I teach everything from anatomy, gesture, perspective to all things related to character design. And I also currently work full-time in the animation industry for the studio that made Castlevania. Also currently prepping right now to work on shows such as Castlevania, Legend of Korra, Invincible. And so if you are interested in some free art education, you guys like anime or animation, or you just want to hang out here to see my dog who never sleeps on their bed, do leave a follow out here on Twitch, and I hope you guys enjoy the YouTube videos and stuff that I also upload. Let's see here. You were so fast I couldn't ask for the camera flip. We did it earlier. We did a camera flip earlier, so I'm not like super sad that we didn't do it this time. I know you guys like the camera flip. Let's see here. How would you transition from one art style to another? Again, it's all about studying, right? Studying what the artists are doing. Like, there's no secret magic sauce of how do you go from realistic to cartoony other than just observing what makes something look cartoony versus something that looks realistic, right? Is it the way that the artist renders? Is it the way that they draw their proportions, right? So I would say just study the different approaches that the artist takes, and that's going to be it. So the stuff that I showed you earlier, those are just basically some study examples from Legend of Korra that I've shown. But again, you know, it all varies in how you want to approach and how you learn. Let's see. How would one study and break down the styles and find the patterns that you find in the Legend of Korra example? Are there specific things I look at? Yeah, so the specific things I look at would be, for example, here's a fun thing you can do. Here's actually an interesting thing that you can do. Let's say you like, I don't know, the style of Naruto, right? I'm sure there's some Naruto fans in the chat. Try to draw the character of Naruto, like let's say draw Naruto from imagination, right? And once you start to draw something and you're like, let me draw the eyes. And then you ask yourself, wait a minute, I don't really know how they draw the eyes. Okay. Then you go in there and then you study, like, okay, let me go study now how the eyes work. And then you go down here and you're like, oh shoot, how do they draw hands in the style of Naruto? So then you go study how they draw hands. Oh, how tall is Naruto? Oh, let me go ahead and figure out how they draw the style, the height, right? So start asking yourself these questions. So anytime you have a question about how something is being drawn, go and study it. And that's what I would recommend, right? So always think about like, okay, what am I actually trying to look at here? And what am I trying to study? Because if you're just trying to copy an image, oftentimes you're going to be missing out on all the opportunities to try to figure out why something works the way that it does. So that's what I'll say. And hopefully that is helpful advice. Apparently a lot of you guys are interested in this idea of style and stuff and finding style. So maybe I'll make a more concise YouTube video doing some tutorials and examples of how to what's it called? How to find your style. Huh? What layer is this? Oh, okay. I was like, what the heck? What did I just do? Okay. Also, thank you for the Prime sub, Quidity. Appreciate that. 5 months, actually. Wow. Jason will take over. We'll take over the Kaycem Crew University. I don't know about that. Jason's been awfully quiet recently. Oh shoot, hold on. Let's see here. Yeah, thanks for the follow, Goldwyn Journey, and everyone else coming here. The switch from a more realistic to more cartoony style was one of the hardest things to learn for me, and you still struggle. Yeah, and I think, you know, it's not something that happens overnight, right? It's definitely something that takes a little bit of time, takes a little bit of practice, but every time you do it and every time you study it, it's going to start to become a little bit more clear, right? Maybe it's something that you studied the first time you didn't notice. And then the second time you took a look at it, you're like, oh, okay, you know, this starts to make a little bit more sense. And you start to get some understanding there overall of what's going on. So I always think like that's kind of the interesting thing there about studying and the learning is that when it comes to something like the fundamentals, like let's say anatomy and stuff, it's not something that I feel like you learn once and then you're done, right? Usually you're going to go back in and you're going to revisit these topics many, many times. And every time you go back in, you'll find that there was something that maybe you missed the first time or something that you didn't really understand the first time. But now that you're at a higher level or a better place, you kind of understand it a little bit better, right? So, just keep practicing, keep doing your thing, improve your own style and your own choices and stuff. And I think you'll be in a much better place for it. Let's see. How do I make smaller or bigger body proportions not look abnormal? The answer to that is you check out my boot camps. The short answer is you check out my boot camps, because that's exactly what the boot camp number 2 is talking about, where we're going over, again, about different body types, different proportions. We're going over how to draw different shapes of characters, right? And so all of these things, all of these collective choices and stuff can help you be able to draw something that looks and feels like whatever it is you want to draw. Now, the interesting thing there about drawing something that's abnormal is you kind of have to ask yourself, what does normal look like, right? If you want to draw something but not have it look abnormal, that means that there's some sort of baseline there, maybe the human proportion or whatever, right? But if you want to draw, let's say, a creature design and you want to make them look like more of a monster, you might actually want to do something that's a little bit different, not the same proportions that you might be seeing when it comes to drawing humans. So I think if you want something to not look abnormal, then you try to keep your proportions the same, which is actually what we're covering here, right? We're covering how to draw, again, different body types, which are relatively the same proportions, but we're using different shapes, different volumes, and overall still achieving a look or a feel that doesn't feel like it's too out there. But all right, we've got here now our 3 body types: athletic body type. We've got here chubby body type, and then last but not least, I'll move this one away, and I'll move this reference away, and let me do this really quick. Shoop. And then we have here the skinny body type. All right. Pick your character. Choose your fighter. There you go. So let me go ahead and color. I'm going to go ahead and color this one out really quick. And then I think we'll be good to actually add a few maybe clothing, some examples, some more details on these character designs that we've blocked out for today, right? Hey, how's it going? I'm Elsie Bra. I wanted to know how to develop consistency and discipline. I mean, little tips and tricks that you did or you know. The biggest tip I would give to building discipline, at least as an artist, is to draw every day and let it be one of the first things you do in your day, right? Kind of like a morning routine. If you can spare 10 minutes to scroll on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube or whatever, you have 10 minutes to draw every day, right? And so do that. Do that every day, even if it's not a good drawing. Maybe if you're only doing a gesture drawing or whatever, or if it's just a bad sketch. But doing that every day starts to build discipline, and eventually you start to become less reliant on things like motivation to go push you to go draw and stuff. Like, how many of you guys in the chat, put an F in the chat if you've ever told yourself, oh yeah, I'm going to draw tomorrow, I'm going to do this and that, and then you wake up and you're like, oh, I'm not really motivated today. I'm not really in the mood to draw, right? I don't know, Kaycem, I'm just not in the zone today, right? How many of you have ever said that before? And so being able to have discipline enough to draw every day, especially on days where you're not in the mood to draw, I feel like is going to be one of the best and biggest ways for you to actually level up and grow and improve faster. Because there's this thing called the rule of 100, which I don't remember who said it, but basically the idea is if you can spend 100 hours a year on something, you will actually be way better off than probably 90-ish% on it. Obviously, this is just an analogy and just some phrases and stuff, so take the numbers with a grain of salt, but you'll be way better off than the large majority of people if you were to just put in and dedicate 100 hours of actual, time and focus onto a particular thing, whether that's art, dancing, music, or whatever have you. And if you think about it, 100 hours every day is roughly about 18 minutes every day, right? So if you put in 18 minutes every day, sure, every day doesn't feel like a lot. You're like, what can you actually do in 18 minutes? But when you compile that together and look at it as an overall whole, you'll realize that, wow, that's actually a good amount of time. 100 hours learning and practicing anything is insane, right? Like if you take a look at like when you were back in school, you're maybe in a classroom for about an hour to 2 hours every day, right? Maybe an hour a day for about 4 to 5 months. So you're basically putting in as much work as you would if you were in school. So that's what I would say about that. Hopefully that answers your question. Hopefully that was helpful advice. And thanks for asking it, by the way. Again, you guys can always ask questions out here on my streams. I always welcome questions out here. If anything, it actually makes it easier for me to stream and have all the questions while I'm drawing and stuff. So please feel free to keep asking questions. I do appreciate them. And if I do miss any questions, it's not because I'm ignoring anything. It's mostly just because it probably gets lost in all the messages. So if you guys have a question and I didn't answer it, just feel free to retype it out here. Let me know and I will try to get back to it if I see it again, which may or may not happen. All right, but let's go ahead now and color this one out, and you can kind of see how the subtle changes between all three of these body types can really create interesting, distinct characters, even though they're all proportionately around the same height, right? They're all kind of like child characters overall. So let me go ahead and fill this one out while I do that. And let me see if I can read if I can answer a question in the meantime. Let's see here. How do you deal with art frustration personally? I've been trying to stick to a schedule, but I feel like I'm pushing it at my own rigidity with my style. You feel like you're pushing it at your own rigidity with your style. Can you give me like more of a specific example? And then I'll see if I can answer that a little bit better. Good for animation. I think anything works. You can use Procreate. You can use CSP. Was it Jordan Peterson? There you go. The Venues do, or the Venus do. Thanks for the follow. Let's see here. What was your advice on what to do when you feel bad about your art? I know you had some really good one. Yeah, okay, sure, I'll answer that too. So the first question was, what was the first question again? The first question was, how do I deal with art frustration? You've been sticking to a schedule, but you feel like you're pushing it at your own rigidity. Okay, so you feel like maybe you're frustrated because maybe you're not growing or whatever. Okay, so let's talk about that. Also, really quick, guys, I do run ads on my stream every hour. So if you do get an ad, thank you again for sticking around. The ads do help keep my streams monetarily viable and allow me to do what I'm doing out here on Twitch. But if you don't want to see any ads, consider subscribing or using a Prime sub. And either way, thank you for your support, and I hope to see you guys after the ad break. But yeah, let me answer that question about art frustration and stuff. I think the question I would ask to you, and this is again, oftentimes you'll see here when you're in my streams, is I usually answer a question with another question because I think that's how I approach things myself, right? So the question is, what does it mean to be frustrated for you, right? Is it that you're frustrated because nothing you're drawing looks good? Are you frustrated because you feel like you are not growing as fast as you like, right? So frustration can mean so many different things, but understanding exactly what you're frustrated in can actually help you to then be able to pinpoint a possible solution into solving that problem. So in your case, you're saying that for you, it's lack of growth. Maybe it's like a feeling like you're not growing fast enough compared to everyone else, right? Like, guys, put an F in the chat if you've ever felt that way, right? You're like, man, Kaycem, I'm on Instagram and all these kids are out here popping off. There's 14-year-old artists who are crazy good. I was never that good at 14. Or maybe when I was younger, I used to draw so much and I used to be so good. But now for some reason, I don't feel like I'm growing as fast as I'd like, right? Put an F in the chat if you've ever felt that way before. It's a common feeling that we have, right? And I think a lot of that frustration actually comes from the perception. It comes from having your expectation versus reality not matching up, right? So what do I mean by expectation versus reality? Well, here's how I think about it. When you first started drawing, you had very, very little expectation of whether or not you were able to draw something good, because you're first starting out. And so what ends up happening, right? You're a beginner artist and you're like, wow, I actually drew a face and it doesn't look like a stick figure. And so all of a sudden your expectation, which was super low, and what you can actually execute on feels good because you're like, wow, I've outdone myself. I've went from stick figure drawings to being able to draw an actual face that looks like something reasonable. And then that's kind of how a lot of artists, how it begins at first, right? Because you have a very basic understanding of drawing, as you start to progress and stuff, you feel like you're making leaps and bounds with your work. But what ends up happening as you start to get better, one, obviously your expectations might also start to change now, because now all of a sudden you're expecting all your drawings to look good. Before, you didn't care because you didn't think you were even good to begin with, but now you have a little bit of an expectation. But then also maybe some of that expectation is also being changed from external forces. Maybe you're on Instagram, all of a sudden you find a 13-year-old artist on Instagram who's doing stuff that's way better than you, and you start wondering to yourself, what am I doing wrong? Why am I not being able to draw stuff like that kid and they're younger than me, right? And so now all of your expectations are not only internal, but also external from other things that you're seeing. And then you start to go out here and you're kind of pushing through and you keep drawing every day and you're scratching your head. You're like, what's going on? So expectation versus reality is, I think, a common problem I see frustration in. And part of the solution of that is addressing those expectations and reality. Are your expectations reasonable, right? Are you being clouded by your expectations such that you don't even get to see your actual growth that you are making with your art? But let's say you are, you're like, hey, so my expectations are real, but I feel like I'm not growing. What's going on here? Here's the second answer to that question. Oftentimes when I hear a beginner artist talk to me about how they feel like they're not growing, I'll ask them, I'll say, okay, well, what are you good at drawing? They might say something like, oh, Kaycem, I'm really good at drawing buff men, or I'm really good at drawing anime waifus, right? So I'm like, okay, cool. Well, have you tried drawing anything else? And then what they might say is, yeah, I tried to draw a male character, but it just doesn't look as good. So I'm more comfortable drawing my anime waifus right now. I just want to make my anime waifus look better. But you see where the problem there is, chat? You guys see what I'm getting at here? In your mind, you're frustrated because you feel like you've plateaued. You feel like you're not growing. But at the same time, whenever you are met with an opportunity to try to improve and try something new, to challenge yourself, what do you tell yourself? You say, I don't know, it's not going to look as good. The expectation of what I want is it's supposed to look really good. So I'm just going to keep sticking to the stuff that I know I'm good at drawing. And so what ends up actually happening there is every time you're met with an opportunity to grow, you get frustrated. You tell yourself, oh, I shouldn't try new things. I should just stick to the same old things. And in your mind, you're reinforcing this idea that trying new things is bad. Keep sticking to the same old good things. But unfortunately, that's not how growth works, right? Growth happens when you are met with challenges that you then eventually overcome. Sometimes you'll draw things out that are new to you and they might look like complete trash, but every time you do it, you learn something a little bit new and eventually you figure it out. And all of a sudden you feel like there is growth, right? So that's kind of another thing there that I feel like is a common problem I see in a lot of beginners is they feel like they're not growing, but at the same time, they're not actually trying to do new things. And I've been there. I've been there many times. There was a very long period of time when I was a beginner where I hated drawing female characters because they never looked as good as the male characters I would draw. I would always look at it and I'd be like, damn, dude, this sucks. I'm just going to keep drawing the same thing, right? So that is what I would say. That is the answer to the question earlier about how do you deal with frustration and all of that stuff. Let me know if that was helpful in the chat, guys. I'm Golden. I'm new to Twitch and I'm a digital artist. Really want to get into art streaming. I already work with commissions for a while. Nice, but I have no clue how to start on streaming and I have no stream friends with same interests in art. Are there any tips for beginner artists on Twitch? I would say to just have fun with it. Do something that you are already interested in doing. So maybe you like doing commissions. So maybe just draw some commissions. And then from there, you know, practice talking about interesting things you want to talk about, things that maybe people who are coming into your chat on occasion might be interested in talking about or hearing about as well. And it all depends, right? So for example, I teach art on Twitch, but not everybody on Twitch teaches art, right? And not everyone also is interested in sitting through a stream of someone teaching art as well. So just because you see something that's popular on Twitch, like just because you see a lot of people drawing anime waifus, doesn't mean you should be drawing anime waifus if it's something you don't care about. So the advice I usually give to a lot of new streamers is just do the things that you genuinely care about, because eventually other people who also care about those very same things are going to naturally and eventually find your stream, and they're going to appreciate you for doing something that you actually are interested in. So that's the thing I would give is I oftentimes see a lot of people being like, oh man, this person is doing this thing. I should probably try that as well because it looks like it's popping off, right? Oh, my dog is here. And for those of you who are coming in right now and wondering what today's stream topic is about, today I'm showing you guys how to draw body types, different body types for children. And so we've talked a little bit about shape language, we've talked a bit about proportions, and as well as doing a few examples. So really today's stream is focused about being able just to visualize the human body in different ways and play around with things like volume, shape, you know, curvature and gesture to be able to get some interesting looking design. So for example, this one is going to be more of a boxy look for your character, more of a rectangular feel, honestly. Whereas this one right here is a little bit more sharper in certain areas. You see more curves and stuff. So I would say this one is more of a triangular look and feel for your character. And we could probably even warp the face a little bit as well too. And then right here, this last one is going to be more of a rounder character, right? So playing around with these different shapes and stuff, volumes can actually create some interesting different body types and body shapes, as well as the gesture. So kind of going in here, I'll draw some quick arrows, right? So here, curvature, here, rounder shapes. So there you go. And then let's do I guess we have some time to actually kind of maybe do some details for these, but let me answer another question that we had earlier in the chat that I think was a really good question. Let's see here. Oh, right. So this was probably the last topic I'll talk about today. And also, if you're watching from YouTube as well, thank you for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you want to see more stuff like this, we're actually going to be doing more on my Twitch stream right now. So this is going to be the end of the YouTube video, but come out to my live streams. Again, I stream Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. So you guys can go ahead and see more of the examples that we cover out here, as well as all the other topics that we talk about. But thanks again for watching YouTube, and come over to my Twitch streams if you haven't yet. But yeah, everyone in the chat say bye YouTube. Bye YouTube viewers. Womp womp womp.